Muy buenas tardes, tengan todos ustedes. Gracias por estar aquí presentes en esta última sesión que corresponde a una conferencia magistral que impartirá el doctor Emilio Crespo, la lengua de los antiguos macedonios. Saludo muy cordialmente al doctor Crespo y agradezco su presencia aquí para cerrar con broche de oro este magnífico 16º Congreso Internacional de la FIEC que se ha desarrollado aquí en la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, con los auspicios del Instituto de Investigaciones Filológicas y la Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, así como por la AMEC. Voy a permitirme leer unas líneas para presentar al doctor Crespo. El doctor Crespo Güemes es catedrático emérito de Filología Griega de la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. Es presidente de la Junta de Patronos de la Fundación Pastor de Estudios Clásicos, también con sede en Madrid. Es doctor honoris causa por la Universidad Aristóteles de Salónica, Grecia. Ha sido profesor visitante de la Universidad de Oxford y de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Ha presentado ponencias en varios congresos celebrados en esta universidad, y es miembro del Consejo Científico de la revista Novatelus del Centro de Estudios Clásicos del Instituto de Investigaciones Filológicas. Fue vicerrector de la Universidad Autónoma de Madrid en 2 periodos, director del Departamento de Filología Clásica, delegado del rector para admisión y régimen de alumnos y secretario del Instituto de Ciencias de la Antigüedad. Obtuvo la calificación de excelencia en la docencia por el periodo 2010-2 en el programa Docentia. Supervisó 8 tesis doctorales y una docena de tesis de fin de máster. Ha dirigido 10 proyectos competitivos de investigación, uno de ellos financiado por la Unión Europea, dentro del programa de investigación e innovación Horizonte 2020, y ha participado como investigador en otros 9 proyectos. La mayoría de ellos versaron sobre la lengua griega clásica. Es autor de 20 libros, entre los que se pueden mencionar la traducción española de la Ilíada de Homero, publicada por la editorial Gredos, y la sintaxis del griego clásico. Y también es autor de unos 140 artículos en revistas académicas o capítulos de libros publicados en España o en otros países y una cuarentena de reseñas críticas. También fue editor asociado de la Enciclopedia de Lengua y Lingüística del Griego Antiguo. Como ya había adelantado, pues, el doctor Crespo Güemes nos expondrá ahora en esta conferencia magistral de cierre la lengua de los antiguos macedonios, y reitero mi agradecimiento, pues, al doctor Crespo por estarnos acompañando en este 16º Congreso Internacional de la FIEC. Sin más, cedo la palabra al doctor Crespo Güemes.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente de la sesión, amigo David García, por sus amables palabras de presentación. He decidido hacer esta charla en inglés, aunque, como verán, pues cometeré algunos errores que espero que me disculpen. I would like to begin this talk by giving my warmest, vamos a poner esto si puedo, my warmest thanks to the organizing committee of the 16th Congress of the International Fédération of Associations of Classical Studies, FIEC, for their kind invitation to participate in this event, which is about to come to its end with great success, thanks to the colleagues and students also of the Universidad Autónoma de México. Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. ¿Puedo compartir? Sí. The purpose of my talk is to present a brief report of the main results of the most recent research on the language spoken by most of the Macedonians at the time of the Macedonian Kingdom. The content is as follows. After a brief historical narrative about the Macedonian Kingdom, since its emergence until its fall, I will first mention the 2 most widespread theories about the language spoken by the ancient Macedonians. Then I will discuss 4 questions to which each theory gives contrary contrary answers. Finally, I will sum up the conclusion by saying that the evidence is in the 4 cases examined that the Macedonians spoke a vernacular variety of the Northwest dialect of Greek and employed other dialectal varieties in their writing. The late use of the institutional writing, together with the early use of the koine, had as a consequence the rarity and brevity of inscriptions in dialect in the early prevalence of the koine in the inscriptions. The focus of my contribution is the period of 5 centuries between the foundation of the Macedonian kingdom in the Pindus Mountains shortly before 670 BC and its end in 168 BC. In these centuries, the Macedonian kingdom first emerged and expanded geographically until it became a sort of a global empire under Alexander III in 336 until 323. After Alexander's death, the kingdom's territory shrank and retained only the southern Balkan Peninsula in the western part of Thrace. It disappeared as a result of the defeat in the so-called Third Macedonian War and became a province of the Roman Empire in the middle of the 2nd century BC. According to the information provided by Herodotus, the kingdom of Macedon set off in the western part of the Pindus Mountains around 670, as I said. Although we don't know its exact origins, it's likely that the original kingdom was located to the west and extended its rule progressively to the east. It made Aegae at the foot of Mount Vermius, its capital at an unknown date. From there, the Macedonian kingdom under the king Perdiccas I in the first half of the 7th century BC expanded his power first to Pieria, and then to Botia, the plain lying between the rivers Aliakmon and Axios. Between 510 BC and the end of the Persian Wars in 479 BC, the Macedonian kingdom extended its control to the left bank of the Axios River, Mygdonia, Crestonia, Anthemus, and Bisaltia. The Macedonian king Alexander I, who kept the power during the first half of the 5th century, played an important role during the Persian invasion of the Balkan Peninsula under Xerxes. His alliance with Xerxes didn't prevent him to be elected by the Athenians as proxenos, something like a consul or a representative of a foreign country, and Euergetes benefactor. The capital of the kingdom was moved from Aegae to Pella around 400 BC. Its strategic location by the lake Loudias, 40 kilometers far away from the sea, improved its security and facilitated at the same time its active participation in international political affairs. Macedonia annexed the Chalkidiki Peninsula and Eastern Thrace during the reign of Philip II, 359 until 336 BC. The campaign led by Alexander III started in 336 and ended with Alexander's death in 323 BC, and the conquest of the Persian Empire transformed the Macedonian kingdom into a sort of global empire, which, however, had a short life. The struggles between the successors, called Diadohoi and Epigonoi, fragmented the empire into several states governed by different dynasties of kings of Macedonian provenance. As far as proper Macedonian is concerned, after the Temenidae and the Antipatridae dynasties, which were swiftly overthrown in 294 and 283 respectively, the Antigonidae dynasty consolidated its power in the kingdom since 277, dominating with their dominion of the central and southern part of the Balkan Peninsula through military fortresses at Corinth, Chalkis, and Demetrias, but not eastern Thrace, which soon fell under the power of the Celts. Finally, the Romans conquered the Kingdom of Macedonia in 178 and divided the territory into 4 parts, called Merides, which were maintained when Macedonia first became a province in 148 and later a bishopric of the Roman Empire. Now let's go to my special question on the language, on the speech of the Macedonians. Until recently, several historians supported the idea that the ancient Macedonians didn't speak Greek. Today, the situation has changed radically. The position that today's scholars held in publications and at conferences which increasingly reliable, accurate, and solid arguments is the following. The ancient Macedonians spoke and wrote dialectal forms of classical Greek at least from about 400 BC, the approximate date of the oldest and rarest inscriptions on stone which have been found so far in the ancient Macedonian territory. The predominant form of Greek was a variety of its own of the Northwest Doric dialect, similar but not identical to that of Epirus and Acarnanian. The features of this dialect don't coincide. The features of this dialect don't coincide with those of other areas elsewhere, and therefore must have been a Macedonian vernacular variety. Other dialects of Greek were also registered and probably spoken in the regions conquered by the Macedonians and integrated into the Macedonian kingdom. Some of the older inscriptions show a dialect that can be described alternatively as Ionic, Attic, or Koine. In other words, this variety has features that can be attributed to any of these 3 dialects, but not to any other of the Greek dialects. The dialect we call Attic Koine spread gradually since the time of the earliest documents. The most recent inscriptions show a dialect that can be described as Attic Ionic, although some of them attest to occasional Northwest Doric features, which survived in spoken communication. The situation that I have just summed up accounts for the evidence better than the theory I will call not Hellenic, which other studies have supported since as early as the 19th century. According to this hypothesis, the ancient Macedonians didn't speak Greek, but a different Indo-European language related to it. We will compare the 2 theories by analyzing 4 questions in which both viewpoints differ one from the other. The not Hellenic theory was based on the absence of ancient documents and also on the consideration of some ancient fonts about the language of the Macedonians. The 2 most well-known passages that seem to refer to the Macedonians as a different language come from Plutarch and Quintus Curtius Rufus. In the life of Mark Antony, Plutarch states that unlike other earlier kings of Egypt, their last successor, Cleopatra, spoke Macedonian among several other languages. On the other hand, in the account about the trial of Philotas given by Quintus Curtius Rufus' life of Alexander, Alexander's cavalry commander-in-chief, Philotas, decides to make his defense in Greek, not in other language. Alexander reproaches his election for not using the Macedonian language and withdraws from the trial, abandoning him to his fate. The earliest instances, the earliest references to the Macedonians come from Herodotus, Thucydides, and other non-Macedonian writers. Most of the remaining Macedonian documents that had come down to us were found in medieval manuscripts and consisted of the so-called glossae, rare words used by the ancient authors, whose meaning is in some cases explained in terms of Greek language. Some glossae, such as Kevle, Kephale, Makedones, as you can see on the screen, offer Greek words. Kevle is a special form which is translated into the normal form of Greek, Kephale, and these are attributed to Macedones. A second example is a comic Athenian presents the following dialogue in which a speaker of the Attic dialect asks, he sphiraina de esti tis, he sphiraina de esti tis, and the Macedonian answers, kestran men ymmes at hotikoi kikleskete. So, sphiraina is a type of fish. What is it? And the Macedonian answers, you, the Attics, call him kestran. So it's hapax in Greek that is not, that it can be considered as foreign language. Most of the remaining, as we have said, the not Hellenic theory was also based on the absence of evidence. However, the developments of the last 50 years have shown that the absence of written documents and of archaeological finds was not due to the fact that they spoke a non-Greek language, but to the delay in the exploration of the historical kingdom of Macedonia. There were various reasons for this delay. The region of Macedonia had been incorporated into the Greek state in 1912, when many sites in ancient Greece had already been discovered and excavated and were known to scholars, or at least by specialists. The two world wars, the Asia Minor catastrophe, the subsequent populations exchanges, and the Greek Civil War after the Second World War prevented or slowed down the start of archaeological research in Macedonian territory. Major archaeological excavations did not begin until 1970. The first part of the second century publication of inscriptions found in an area of Macedonia. The first 20th century publication of inscriptions found in an area of Macedonia was published in 1972, while those from other areas of Greece had been published since the 19th century. A positive and unexpected consequence of this delay in the archaeological and epigraphic exploration of Macedonia is that many of the most recent findings have been made under Macedonian soil. These are the cases of the great tumulus of Vergina and the charred scroll of Derveni, which are considered among the most important 20th century archaeological findings in Greece. Thanks to the activity of various institutions such as the Center for Greek and Roman Antiquity and of the National Hellenic Research Foundation and the Berlin-Brandenburgische Akademie der Wissenschaften, and brilliant and tireless researchers such as Miltiades Hatzopoulos and his team, since 1972, more than 10 volumes of inscriptions found on Macedonian soil have been published. A selected list of editions of Greek inscriptions from ancient Macedonia is included is included in this and the following slides. So there are more or less 20 books having inscriptions. In these last 50 years, more than 1,000 texts have been published engraved on stone or other materials throughout the geography of ancient Macedonia. Most of them are short, fragmentary, or late. Many of them are funerary and attest only to the name of the owner or owners of the tomb. Many of them are written in Attic Koine after Alexander's death. Since the edited inscriptions and other documents are written in Greek, we can safely conclude that the Macedonians spoke and in all cases wrote Greek. The personal and place names preserved in such inscriptions are overwhelmingly Greek. We can see here on the screen the website of the Lexicon of Greek Personal Names, of which the fifth volume contains the personal names of the north of ancient Greece. The personal and place name preserved in such inscriptions are, as I was saying, overwhelmingly Greek. As is well known, most Greek personal names have a symbolic laudatory meaning that expresses the expectations of the parents for the future of their newborn children. Furthermore, most personal and place names found in Macedonian inscriptions appear in other parts of ancient Greek world. So we can more or less say that in almost all cases, the personal names of Macedonians are Greek names. Furthermore, similarly, most names of months are derived from the name of annual festivals of the Olympian religion. We have here the name on the screen, the name of a number of the month, of the names of the months, and some of them at least can be interpreted as derivations of Greek words. Dios from Zeus, Apelaios from Apollon, Audalios from the name of the god Aides, Peritios, it's a bit more difficult, Distros, it can be related with Pedo, Xanthikos, probably has a relation with Xanthikos, Bron, Artemisios with Artemis, Daisios with Dice, Banquet, and so on, and others. So, as I was saying, similarly, most names of months are derived from the name of annual festivals of the Olympian religion. In conclusion, the arguments for the Greek character of the language spoken by the ancient Macedonians are based on the language in which more than 1,000 inscriptions engraved on stone or other materials and found in the geographical area of the Macedonian kingdom are written. Most of these documents have been published for the first time in the last 50 years. The Hellenic theory was also supported by the differences between the social and political institutions of the Macedonians and those recorded in the most well-known cities of ancient Greece. The monarchical form of government in the Macedonian kingdom contrasted with the aristocratic or democratic forms of government in the city-states. The federal structures in the nation-states were also in contrast to those of the critics, which had a single urban center where decisions were made. Finally, the lack of data didn't allow us to determine whether the most powerful cities' beliefs about the Olympian gods parallel the cult carried out in nation states. In any case, archaeological finds in the Macedonian kingdom and historical studies conducted in recent decades on the political institutions of ancient Greece have emphatically shown strong similarities in beliefs and a certain degree of diversity in political and social institutions in relation to cities. The tombs myth of the abduction of Persephone is common in the decoration of tombs. This is just an example to stress the general idea of the fact that there is no close distinction between the themes in the archaeological findings of Macedonia and in the rest of Greece. And this is also the third, the abduction of Persephone once again by Pluton in the second room of the tomb of Amphipolis. Now let's move to the evolution of the aspirate voiceless plosive consonants in the Macedonian dialect. The third difference between the two theories about the language of the Macedonian kingdom is phonetic in nature. The contrast observed in the initial consonant of words such as Ferenika in other Greek dialects and Berenika, and also written Bernika or Berenno in Macedonian, is interpreted differently by the two theories we consider. The noun Ferenika or Berenika is a Greek compound of two elements which are also seen in the verb fero, I bear, and the noun Nike, victory. It's used as a feminine personal name and means bearer of victory. The initial character of the word Ferenika comes from an unaspirate voiceless plosive consonant P, like the P in the English word pod, which is derived from the corresponding Indo-European voiced sound P, as indicated by the Sanskrit homomorphemic verb parami, meaning to bring, to bear. According to the not Hellenic hypothesis of Macedonian, the developments of the initial voiced pair into the voiceless pair in Greek predates 1200 BC, the time of the Macedonian tablets, of most of the Macedonian, large part of the Macedonian tablets, since the linear B-syllabic system documents the verb pere, written with P, pere written with P, which is written with the same phonogram as in the word pedehuesa, which should be here, pedehuesa, which is a Mycenaean adjective meaning with feet, and is applied to tripods and so on. And indicates that the original consonant is voiceless, as in other Greek dialects. The old aspirate voiced plosive consonant P would have lost its voicing quality, which was kept in German languages, as shown, for example, by English to bear and birth. The conclusion should be that the Macedonian development of the inherited aspirate plosives was different from that of Greek. This will be the case of the. In this case, would be the development of the other Greek dialects according to the not Hellenic theory, and this would be the case of Macedonian, which be coincident with the Germanic languages. The conclusion would be that the Macedonian development of the inherited aspirate plosives was different from that of Greek, at least from 1200 BC, because the Macedonian type is like the development found in the Germanic languages, but obviously doesn't agree with the Greek type. There is, however, an alternative explanation for this phenomenon, and I will limit myself in this presentation with some a pair of examples. The voiceless aspirate process bilabial consonant PH, which was common to all Greek dialects, shifted into the fricative F, as we can see here, kepalios, shifted to phi, to the fricative F in the Macedonian dialect at an earlier date than in other dialects. So this is the ancient form, and we have something like a evolution prior in the time in Macedonian, and this is the evolution sometime later in the other dialects of Greek. The weakening, because the development from a plosive, from a stop consonant to a fricative consonant, consists in a weakening or a softening of the aspirate and voiced plosives into fricatives, was a result of their assimilation when they were between some environments. Probably when they were between vowels, or between a vowel and a fricative, or voiced plosive within the word, and at boundaries of words without a previous pause. Thus, the inherited masculine name kephalos, derived from the noun kepale, developed into kephalos, and it is still extant in modern Greek. A similar weakening of the plosive consonants into fricatives at the same point of articulation is occurred in modern Western languages derived from Latin, such as Italian, in part of northern Italy, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. For example, the phoneme D in the name of the city where I live, Madrid, is not pronounced by most of the native speakers of Spanish from the Iberic Peninsula as a dental stop D. So the common pronunciation in these areas is normally not po Madrid, but it's not pronounced like a dental stop, but as a dental fricative, as in modern Greek pronunciation of the same word. We normally say Madrid, with a fricative in the first D, and it's coincident with what is found in Greek, in modern Greek, where the name of the same city is Madriti. A similar development is documented in other dialects of ancient Greek, occasionally from the 6th century BC, and relatively frequently from the early Hellenistic period. Moreover, the writing with beta, delta, and gamma, which may document a fricative pronunciation of an ancient voiced plosive, is attested not only in Macedonia, where we find also places like this one. This is a lamine square of the golden piece of gold, where we have the name Bulomaga, but we have here, it's interesting that we have something like a correction with B or with F. It cannot be seen, and this is the small omicron. So this would be one of the examples of this fricativization found in Macedonia. In this case, in this golden piece found in the tomb of a person. We also find some examples of this type of fricativization that's where on which a French colleague called our attention, and these are the names found in different descriptions of Thessaly, in the north part of Thessaly, in Parebia, where we have drebelaos, which is something like the dialectal form of trepheleos, with these chains. The voiceless is replaced by the voiced consonant, and in this case, the fricative, the voiceless aspirate stop is replaced by probably the pronunciation of fricative beta. And this is a similar case with F and B, and this is a feminine name. These names, drebelaos and bulonoa, are the only cases attested in Thessaly, but there are also some other examples in other different discontinuous areas from Macedonia. The writing of a fricative, as in Berenica, instead of an aspirate plosive or a voiced plosive, is far from reflecting a uniform distribution in the inscriptions of the Macedonian kingdom. The comparison between the inscriptions of Aigai and those of Pella, the successive capitals of the Macedonian kingdom, shows that most examples come from Aigai. This suggests that the fricative pronunciation of the aspirate voiceless plosive consonants, stopped consonants, and of the voiced plosive consonants was more common in the territories belonging to the Macedonian kingdom from antiquity than in later additions in conquests, such was the case of Pella. So the general conclusion of this part related to the treatments, to the changes of the voiceless aspirate consonants, stops consonants, and the confusion between voiceless plosives and probably voiced plosive or voiced plosive or fricative consonant. And now our last point, we will conclude with an example that illustrates a fourth difference between the Hellenic and the not Hellenic interpretations of Macedonian. A set of inscriptions found in the Kingdom of Macedonia are written in the Koine dialect. Those who argue that Macedonians didn't speak Greek assume that the Koine replaced the non-Greek language they had spoken before. The alternative position that we defend gives way to the fact that some inscriptions written in Attic or Koine are hybrid because they show features that are exclusively characteristic of Northern Greek, Northwest Doric. This fact suggests that the Northwest Doric dialect was vernacular, at least in some circumstances in the Kingdom of Macedon, and that the Doric features reflect that Koine and Northwest Doric were in contact. The earliest Macedonian document that is long enough to be taken to be dialectal was found in a cemetery of Pella in 1986 and was announced in 1993 and definitively published in 1998. It is scratched on a sheet of lead in the Milesian alphabet and has been dated between the second quarter and the middle quarter of the 4th century BC. This is a picture taken from the Pella Museum with the Greek edition by the author and editor. And this is a translation taken from the internet of this Pella Curse tablet of Thetima and Dionysophon, the ritual wedding and the marriage. I bind by a written spell and all other women, both widows and maidens, but of Thibaut in particular, and I entrust to Macron and the daimones, and only when I should dig up again and unroll and read this, that she might wed Dionysophoon, but not before, for I wish him to take no other woman than me. And that I grow old with Dionysophoon and no one else. I'm your supplicant. Have pity or on fire, the dear diamonds, for I'm a Dagina, for I'm Tapina, an humble person of all my dear ones, and I am abandoned. And the rest is more difficult to understand. The content of its 9 scribed lines is a magical spell that a woman in love addresses against the eventual marriage of a man called Dionysophoon with a woman called Thetima. We are going to show something like an analysis of the dialectal features of this spell. There are some examples which are not coming from which are not Aeolic. There are also some features, dialectal features, which cannot be Attic Ionic Koine. There are some features that can only be Northwest Doric dialectal features, and there is other group that can be analyzed as Koine or Northwest Doric. And finally, there are some cases, for example, in the case of Madapina, interpreted as Tapeina, humble, and the case of Genestai instead of Genestai, which is also interpreted as an indication of the fact that this pronunciation, that this T has to be understood as a dental plosive, voiceless dental plosive, not as an aspirate, as in the case of Genestai. So the result would be that what we have here is a combination of dialectal features which are unprecedented in the Greek inscriptions, and at the same time there are attested some features that are not attested, unattested elsewhere. That there are attested some features which are not attested elsewhere, and this is the case of the Dapina and probably and more probably in the case of Genestai, which comes also in other in some other inscriptions from the Northwest dialect, Doric dialect. So the Pella Chorus tablet has revealed a new dialect of ancient Greek. Its dialectal features don't coincide with any other dialect known so far, although it has traces of influence from the Attic Ionic Koine. The text shows ginomai and ginitai, which rationally attest to the influence of the Koine. Since the use of ginomai instead of gignomai is common in Koine, we can consider that the chorus shows a vernacular hybrid dialect with Macedonian features, and also Northwest, only some other features coincident only with the Northwest Doric dialect. Since the Pella Chorus tablet displays a combination of dialectal features that differ from all other local or literary dialects, the possibility is excluded of its being written in some other dialectal area and then brought to Pella. Being exclusively attested in ancient Macedon, this dialect can be rightly called Macedonian. It is a poorly and lately documented as, for instance, the Pamphylian dialect, but there is no doubt about its condition of being a Greek dialect. This finding also teaches us that given that societies don't change languages frequently, The Northwest Doric dialect of Greece was also the language spoken in an indeterminate period before the documents that have come down to us. This period, according to the information provided by Herodotus, is assumed to date back to at least the beginning of the second third of the 7th century BC. The previous discussion leads us to conclude that the evidence taken into account proves beyond any doubt that the Macedonians spoke a vernacular dialect of the Northwest Doric Greek. They also spoke, or at least wrote and read, several forms of Greek language, and in particular a form of the Attic Ionic dialect, which would evolve into the Attic Koine from the beginning of the written texts that had come down to us. Thank you very much for your attention, and excuse me for my mistakes and errors. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias a usted, muchas gracias por esta magnífica presentación sobre este dialecto del macedonio, una presentación muy completa, muy amplia sobre estas variantes dialectales que uno puede encontrar en la composición de esta reconstrucción que usted ha hecho, tomando aspectos fonéticos, morfológicos, con todas estas evidencias que se pueden encontrar, que se han encontrado, que se han estudiado ampliamente. Me parece pues que se ha cumplido muy bien al cerrar este magnífico congreso con esta exposición muy clara, muy específica sobre el macedonio. Tenemos muy poquito tiempo porque vamos enseguida a la clausura de este evento, pero quizá en nuestros asistentes, si hubiese alguna pregunta que quieran ustedes hacer al doctor Emilio Crespo, pues adelante, contamos quizá con un par de minutos para hacerlo. La maestra Silvia Aquino, no sé si puede serlo a través está ya la maestra Silvia Aquino. Adelante, Silvia.
Muchas gracias. Una felicitación muy grande a Emilio Crespo, que ha sido nuestro maestro durante mucho tiempo. Me da mucho gusto que ustedes tengan ese proyecto de la lengua macedonia prácticamente desconocida. Mi pregunta va en relación, el griego moderno en relación con el griego antiguo ha sido una variación impresionante. ¿Lo mismo pasa con la lengua macedonia? Gracias.
Yo creo que el griego macedonio es un dialecto del griego que desapareció seguramente antes que otros dialectos hablados en la antigüedad, porque allí se extendió muy rápidamente la koiné jónico-ática. La razón era que en un primer momento, pues en la época del comienzo de la koiné, en el siglo IV o incluso finales del siglo V, el papel de los macedonios en la política internacional era muy importante y, por tanto, en la política internacional de Grecia, y, por tanto, se difundió muy rápidamente la koiné jónico-ática. Además, a eso ayudó el hecho de que el dialecto macedonio de griego apenas había sido utilizado en la escritura, por el hecho de que, digamos, las instituciones políticas del Reino de Macedonia no favorecían el uso, digamos, de los textos inscripcionales que encontramos en otros lugares. Es decir, que la idea sería que el macedonio antiguo es un tipo de dialecto como el de Epiro, el de Acarnania, que son variedades distintas, todas ellas, o el etolio, todas ellas del griego dórico noroccidental.
Sí, muy bien, muchas gracias por la respuesta. ¿Habrá alguna pregunta más por ahí? ¿Alguna participación más? Bueno, Pues nuevamente, Emilio Crespo, muchísimas gracias por tu participación y por esta erudita presentación sobre la lengua de Macedonia y todas las referencias que nos has brindado, que sin duda para los que interesan este tipo de estudios lingüísticos, en fin, es una orientación muy buena, muy interesante y una gran aportación. Sin más, agradezco nuevamente la presencia del doctor Emilio Crespo y con esta magnífica intervención, cerramos los trabajos propiamente del 16º Congreso Internacional de la FIEC e inmediatamente vendrá la ceremonia de clausura y los invitamos a que sigan entonces conectados mediante el Facebook, mediante el YouTube, el canal del Instituto. En un momento entonces será esta clausura del 16º Congreso Internacional de la FIEC. Muchas gracias de nuevo, Emilio Crespo, y muchas gracias a todos los asistentes a esta conferencia magistral de cierre. Gracias.
Gracias a ustedes.